move now to the issue of NSFAS. The SA Union of Students is condemning delays in payments to NSFAS beneficiaries. Now, about 100,000 students have not received payments for 2 months now, and this is leading them to running out of food as well as their basic necessities. And NSFAS is blaming the delays on universities. They say that varsities failed to submit the students' information on time. But let's hear from the students now, the students' perspective. And for this, we're joined by the SA Union of Students, the President, Asive Dlanjwa. A very good morning to you, Mr. Dlanjwa. Thank you for your time today. So what exactly is the situation? For 2 months in a row now, we are hearing that students have actually not been getting their NSFAS money. And this is the money that they use to buy toiletries, to buy food, I guess to cover their living expenses. Being on the ground, what is the situation?
Good morning, Sister Tammy, to you, your viewers and your listeners. Thank you for having us. Correction, I'm the national spokesperson of the union. It has been a dire situation and absolutely devastating for thousands of students. Obviously, there are these numbers which obviously also NSFAS has not been able to verify, but we believe that they would be in the range of probably just over 100,000 of students that would not have received their allowances, or rather that the allowances would have been delayed for the month of October. And NSFAS has apportioned this to what they believe is would have been the university's fault and responsibility in not being able to comply within what they term the data adjustment process. And as far as we are concerned, that is unacceptable, because it is not for the first time that the students were due to receive their allowances. And it cannot be that month after month we are having challenges with students being able to get their allowances. One thing here is clear, is that there is no coherence between public institutions of higher learning and NSFAS to be able to have a system that ensures that students are able to get their allowances on time. And we put this squarely on at the feet of the minister. It is the ministry's responsibility to coordinate and ensure that the sector is coherent and pulls in one direction. It is not the first time we were seeing a tug of war between NSFAS and institutions, where at the receiving end is the suffering of thousands of students across the country. That's just but one problem. The second problem is that it's not only the students that their allowances that were delayed for this month. We are sitting with what we estimate probably would be around the range of 70,000 students who still have not received their allowances since May up until today. Mind you, those students are now writing their examinations. We are sitting with further thousands of students who have appealed to NSFAS since February. Up until today, they have not received any responses as it pertains to their appeals. So really, it has been a devastating time for students across the country, thousands of them, for one reason or the other, all at the mercy of NSFAS and some of them at their institutions.
You're highlighting quite a number of issues here, and I'm quite interested. The first one I'd like to pick up on the 100,000 students who now haven't received their allowances for this month. Is this the same group of students who, because of the data transfer system that has now been put in place, are they the same students who were affected last month, or is this a different cohort of students that we are referring to?
The students that we are referring to now would be a different cohort. These students would have not received their allowances based on this which NSFAS calls a data adjustment process. But there has been, as we say, thousands of other students who have still not been receiving their allowances from month to month for one reason or the other. Some of the reasons would have been the ones that I've mentioned. But the numbers that we are speaking about now would only pertain to those that were reportedly affected by the data adjustment process, which would have affected their October allowances.
What NSFAS is saying is that there's no way that they can pay students if their names and the verification process, as well as their identities and all the prerequisite information, is actually not in place. Whose fault is this? Who should be doing what that they're not doing?
You see, you cannot maintain order through causing disruption and destruction. And that is what is happening. We appreciate the principle that NSFAS is bringing forward as an explanation to say we are doing the due diligence to ensure that we pay people who are supposed to be paid. But we are saying that cannot be done. You cannot undermine your very mandate in seeking to uphold due diligence. The mandate of NSFAS is to ensure that students have the necessary necessities to be able to participate in teaching and learning in their academics. And that is not happening. That is our point. Now, as much as I said, we would appreciate what would have been the spirit of the data adjustment process, but we are saying, this student is not the first time they are receiving allowances. Now, let us take this principle. For instance, NSFAS is saying, no, we must check on a continuous basis who is still registered, etc., whatever they believe the data adjustment process will achieve them. So let's imagine this is done on a month-to-month. Are you then saying to me that every month we are guaranteed to sit with hundreds of thousands of students not receiving their allowances? It tells you that the process or the mechanisms meant to factor what they believe is the principle of due diligence does not work. It means the system is broken, the system is not working, because they have just but one mandate, and that is to ensure that every month they disperse allowances so that students have food, so that students have toiletries, so that students have their sanitary products, etc. That is all that they are required to do. And failure to do that on a month-to-month basis is a sabotage of their very own mandate. Now, we understand that there are also institutions of higher learning who would have used this process to sabotage it so that they go back to choosing their own companies to do the disbursements. We are aware of that, but we are saying if the department does not intervene in ensuring that there is coherence between these two necessities, then we are guaranteed to have hundreds of thousands of students suffering and going hungry every month without fail.
Are you then saying blame lies with the Department of Higher Education, that they are the ones that should intervene and sort this out once and for all?
Absolutely, without fail. The department must intervene. These are both public entities under the tutelage and the leadership of the department, and they are busy playing ball with the lives and the futures of our students. So absolutely, the failure for the sector to operate will always and must always be put squarely at the foot of the ministry. So there is absolutely no two ways and questions about. One thing is clear, which is a system which we have seen from the beginning of the year, is that there are no good working relations between NSFAS and institutions. So that disjuncture has to be consolidated by the state, by the department. One thing is clear is that both these two entities, they have proven that they don't have the requisite capacity and competency to work together in the interest of the students. So the department, empowered by the Higher Education Act, must act and ensure that there is coherence in the sector, that we are not seeing this back and forth that we have been seeing between NSFAS and institutions of higher learning.
That said, as a South African Union of Students, what are the measures that you would put in place if you had the power and the say-so of fixing the system? What would you do?
The first thing we would do would go to NSFAS and probably fire 90% of the people that work there. You can speak to anyone. You can dipstick and speak to anyone, a student, a parent, a university official, a government, anyone who has ever interacted with NSFAS will tell you that some of the most useless people work at NSFAS. We are sitting, as I've told you right now, with thousands of students who have appealed, who write and call to NSFAS every day. Ourselves, when we speak and engage with with the majority of the staff at NSFAS, they are failing to assist us in dealing with issues of students. So the first thing we would do would be to do a cleaning and an overhaul of the scheme, do a proper skills audit and ensure that we have the right people in place to ensure that they're able to drive the mandate of NSFAS. And the second thing, obviously, we would do is to ensure that we have a payment system that is not compromised, a disbursement payment system that is not compromised, and that is devoid of many middlemen, because that is where corruption is bred. That is one of the things that needs to happen. at NSFAS. And then in the immediate, what we would do if we were leading that scheme would be to go and find out. NSFAS has a registry of students that they are funding, and yet the allowances that they disperse a month, it does not correspond to the amount of students whom they say they are funding. So that tells them that there are students who are left in the crack that are not receiving the allowances. So they need to go down to all universities, to all colleges, and ensure that they find those students and they ensure that they're assisting them to be able to get the allowances, because these students have been reaching out, unfortunately, to no avail. So these are some of the things that need to be done, and maybe not even by NSFAS, it needs to be done by the department, because it is the department that is leading the sector. So these are some of the things that obviously need to be done expeditiously, and obviously we appreciate, as I've said before, there are institutions that are not working in the right spirit to ensure that there's cordiality and coherence. So one of the things that the ministry needs to do is to crack the whip with those institutions. It is really not difficult, Sister Tammy, to disperse allowances. You have a registry of students whom you know are funded by NSFAS. You need a mechanism that is reliable and not compromised to pay the allowance. It is really not difficult. It can't be that every month there is one crisis or the other as it pertains to feeding and ensuring that the students of the poor and the working class are serviced in our country.
Asive, thank you so much for your time this morning and putting your perspective down as the South African Union of Students. He is the spokesperson.